Welcome, everybody, to our ninth Lift Up Live broadcast. Rosey, Grant, and I are back for a very hot topic at the moment, which is future focused careers. Think ahead, get ahead, with two exceptional key speakers that we can't wait to bring into this live broadcast. But before we do, if you're completely new to the Lift Up community group for the first time, our mission statement here is to connect, inspire, and champion women right across the life sciences industry from academia all the way through to C-suite. So this has snowballed. I think we kicked it off, Rosey. It was in the summer of last year, wasn't it?
Yep.
Around August time. We've done a live broadcast every month, which is phenomenal. We've got over 22,000 global views since that date. And we couldn't be more delighted to have Liebelt and Lynn Sullivan, two exceptional speakers that will be joining us very shortly, dialing in. But before we do so, Rosey and I would give very brief introductions and top lines into ourselves. So I'm Louise Williams. I'm the Global Operations Director here at Fraser Dove International, Life Sciences Executive Search Talent Consultancy. And I've been in the business now for coming up to 2 years, staffing for nearly 18 years and life sciences for just under 10 years now, where I started off as a clinical and a medical recruiter before taking on management, director, and now leadership roles. I'm also a mother of two. I've got a 2-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl that keep me very, very busy as well. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to hop over to you, Rosey, if you'd be so kind to do an introduction to the audience.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us. It'd be great to hear from you where you're coming from today and also where you are within your career paths. But from my side, obviously, I've been at Fraser Dove for about 3 years now. I work within the consultancy role, so working in the recruitment space and technical operations. But before that, was lucky enough to work within an EMEA team for marketing in interventional oncology for Boston Scientific, and had the absolute pleasure of some amazing female mentors, managers, and coaches that has kind of built the reason why I want to be a part of this community today. It looks like some people are already joining us. So hi, Sean. Sean is saying hello to everyone and is happy to connect. Um, again, we'd love to know where you're coming in from today. What point of your career path are you in? So we can really understand how to answer hopefully all of your questions. There's a few more coming in.
Yeah, please do so. I think what makes some of these live broadcasts so special is literally getting the global interaction, isn't it, Rosey?
Yeah.
We've had so many comments and people dialing in from all over the globe. So as Rosey said, pop it in as to where it is that you're dialing in from, and what stage and at what point and stage of your professional career you're currently at. Because I think this topic today, it can hopefully be really relatable for those that are potentially starting their professional career journey for the first time and want to be thinking, how to think 2 steps ahead. Or whether it is that you're a director or a VP and you've got a lot of experience to date in the life sciences space and you're contemplating wanting to become a board member, or what is it that I need to be thinking about and doing in order to get onto a C-suite panel. So hopefully our great key speakers today can answer some of your questions live towards the back end of this broadcast. And I think without further ado, Rosey, I feel like we've got lots of people coming in,
Yeah, loads of
which is
people jumping
brilliant.
in. We've got Saeed from LA. We've
Hmm.
got Amelia coming in from Pennsylvania. Thank you for joining. We've got oh my god, it's going
Wow.
so fast. We've got Ma from Switzerland. Hello everyone, and more coming
Yeah,
in. I
wow.
think we're pretty global right now. We've got UK,
Yeah.
Europe, Asia. So without, I suppose, while everyone comes in and says hello,
Yeah.
let's get the guests on.
Absolutely. So it gives me great pleasure to bring Kate into this live broadcast. Kate, would you do the honors of doing an introduction to the audience for us?
Absolutely. Please let me know if I'm coming in clear.
Yep.
Louise, Rosie, and Lynn, thank you so much. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Kate Liebelt here in Chicago, downtown Chicago. I am a life sciences and healthcare strategy and operations leader. I've been in the industry for just over 20 years. I've had the opportunity to serve as both a management consultant and a chief of staff to C-suite and senior leadership teams. I'm also a not-for-profit board member, and I am the mom to 3 Cavapoos, cutest dogs on the planet, Jen and Pierre. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Lovely.
Thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Okay. Yeah. And without further ado, we'll bring Lynn in. Hello, Lynn. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you wouldn't mind doing an introduction.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I love to see all of these places all around the globe logging in. It's very exciting. I am a healthcare executive where I have spent 29 years between the US and global endeavors. I've been predominantly in the pharmaceutical side on the commercial end. So I've held every role from sales to strategy to marketing to operations to learning and development and everything in between. It has been an absolutely wonderful career in this space. I am also a mother of 2, and my children, one is a recent graduate from college and will continue on actually in life sciences. And
Oh,
the other one has a few years left, but she's coming along. And just like Kate, I have a few fur babies at home too that truly are just like an extension to the family.
yeah.
So I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lynn. That's lovely. And coming back to everybody dialing in, Rosie, would we
Yeah,
just
we've got Kate.
say
Oh,
hello?
yes. Yeah, I was just saying we've actually got Katie here. She's saying, "Hi, ladies. I'm from London, and she loves Cavapoos." We've got more coming in. Emma, happy to connect. We've got Ma, who's you looking for her next career move after 20 years of experience. We've got Gloria coming in from New Jersey. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Carla, Orange County in California. We've also got some coming in. Oh, we can't see here, but privacy settings, but someone from Ohio. So thank you everyone for joining.
Yes.
Obviously, I think, Louise, I'll pass on to you, but I guess we'll get started with why it's important to be a part of the Lift Up community.
100%. We've got some really, really good key questions actually that we'd love to ask you, and I naturally believe that we're going to get a lot through from the audience as well. But I'll kick off as to, why was it important for you to be a part of the Lift Up community and joining this broadcast today? And I'll come to you, Kate, first, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Now, upon meeting you both and learning more about the Lift Up series, I realized quickly it embodies several of my personal values. One, pay it forward. We have to network and build relationships and pay those insights and wisdom and opportunities forward. And then the second piece is I truly believe your network is your net worth. So the more that we can do to engage and support one another, the more that we'll all succeed.
Love that. Yeah, thank you, Kate. Couldn't agree more. And Lynn, come to you with the same question.
Yes, actually, I would add on to what Kate just said. I also think right now the Lift Up community, in that it represents an international, diverse, multicultural network, that is really what most companies are trying to strive for with their DEI and B initiatives. And this is living and breathing and embodying that. So I think being a part of a network like this is integral to the success of any type of life sciences or other businesses right now. And you've done such a great job at pulling the globe together into one network. It's very, very exciting to be a part of and to see all of that come to life in a way that does pay it forward. And I think Kate said it really well. Your network is your net worth.
100%. I think, to gain mentors, to gain coaches, to just expand that network, it's such a great platform. And I think already we're seeing a lot of people build relationships. I think even you two, actually, you were saying to me earlier that, you've gone and had an hour and a half's conversation offline even before this broadcast, which was brilliant. And actually our 2 live broadcasters on the last event, they were 25 minutes down the road from each other in Chicago at one point. So they've, swapped mobile numbers and are connecting. So, we couldn't be more pleased as a group of ambassadors that this is the direction in which it's going. So, thank you for sharing. We've got a couple of people here. Hi, Lynn. Great to see you. You might know Raja. We've got Liebelt as well. I've spoken a lot to Liebelt. Lovely to have you here. Also, Stuart, looking great, Lynn. Smiley face. I love that. So thank you so much for those that are dialing in. So I am going to kick off with a question that actually really I thought stood out to me here. So looking back on your successful careers, what advice would you give your younger self? We usually kickstart this, or we usually save this question sometimes actually to the end, but I think there is so much that could be added question wise from the audience, even off the back of this. It would be great to kickstart with this one, I think, this time. So Lynn, I'll come to you first with this question.
Yes, I love this question. And it actually prompted great dinner time discussion, even with family and friends. I know when Kate and I talked about this, it was truly the one that we spent the most amount of time on, because I think as you navigate your career, no matter if you're 29 years into your career, 10 years, or even 2 years, you start to learn, hopefully with every role that you've had, what is that thing that you would advise somebody else to do or not to do? So I think in this case, we had a lot of different ideas, but one of them that comes to life for me is we often think of career progression as a ladder. I think we should change our thoughts around that. It's really more of a jungle gym, meaning it's not straight up, and it really should not be straight up. I think when we are our younger selves, we think, what is that next line of progression? If I'm a rep in life sciences, I need to be a manager, I need to be a trainer, I need to be, as opposed to going straight up, that doesn't give you a strong foundation when we talk about looking ahead. So a lot of today's talk, I know, is talking about how do you look 2 to 5 years ahead of where you want to go and make decisions around today's career decisions and progression because of where you want to go 5 years from now, which means you may have to go left to right. You may have to go laterally. You may have to go into different functional areas. So now it looks more like a jungle gym. You're going to kind of go sideways before you start to climb up. And in some cases, you may have to go down the slide a little bit before you can come back up at an even higher altitude or higher level position. So doing that earlier as you plan your career, because it's very hard to do that when you're too high up and you haven't built a broad base. Now you have to take financial steps sometimes backwards, which sometimes you're not able to, depending on where you are in life. And you have other commitments in your personal life that may or may not allow you to take those lateral steps. So doing them early and thinking of your career as a jungle gym and not a ladder was one of the things I think I would tell my younger self, if you would. Kate, I know you had great ideas as well.
I could not agree with the points you've raised more, Lynn. I mean, this is a marathon, not a sprint, right? And years in management consulting really challenged me to always be thinking about those emerging, almost nascent spaces and keeping an eye on those spaces and the implications for your industry. Always be a continuous learner. School doesn't stop when you receive the degree, right? Because the best leaders are continuous learners. Another seemingly simple but really tough thing to do sometimes in your career is to stay optimistic and positive. Embrace change and adversity and uncertainty. That will serve you so well throughout your professional career and life.
Yeah.
And I think, Kate, that also feeds really nicely into the idea that you will get feedback throughout your whole career. If you're constantly taking all the feedback to heart and it's changing who you are as a leader, I think I would also tell my younger self, and Kate, you may too, that sometimes it's not about change when you get feedback. It's about modification. So being authentic and staying true to who you are and realizing that you are a leader. I am a leader that uses her hands when she speaks. Despite years of getting feedback that you use your hands less, I realized I couldn't say as much if I didn't use my hands. So I learned to modify, soften that, as opposed to just doing away with it. And I'm sure there's plenty of other feedback we've all received in our careers that you can't take all of it 100% and make a full change, but rather modify, soften, stay authentic and true to yourself, because that's why you're so successful.
Yeah, I think both of you are really, really relevant points. The jungle gym for me really stands out. Two points actually that I'm thinking of in my mind. As a medical and a clinical recruiter, years ago, I was working with a number of medical doctors. Predominantly, they were actually physicians, but there was a lot of conversation, even 5 years or so ago, around trying to get to the chief medical officer role. And actually, in many organizations, whether it's biotech startups, to be able to fully really position yourself well in those CMO roles, often or not, it was about having the diversity of skill set and understanding of not only from a medical late phase, but an early phase clinical development experience. So if there were physicians that were climbing a ladder, whether it be in medical affairs or clinical development, they were not necessarily fully embodying that, CMO role where the diversity of clinical development and medical affairs kind of comes in. So I think your analogy of not just going up vertically, but actually, adding kind of multiple strings to your bow as you're climbing, and that there isn't necessarily like a route up. It could be, a wiggly line. That's just what stood out for me. That's clearly evident. And I actually spoke to an individual a week ago who sits on a board of around 8 boards. She was saying, and she said to me that the best bit of advice now that I'm sitting on boards and I'm seeing the C-suite panel is actually, if you climb too vertically, you don't have that breadth of experience when you are sitting in a board. So I think that's both really, really sound advice.
Yeah. And I suppose part of it's getting over your ego a bit. I know, like being in an early stage career, it's easy to get title orientated, salary orientated, or, wanting to lead a team. But I suppose once you get past that, you can actually see the future benefits of diversifying your CV. I wanted to pull the audience in and say just quickly, if you do have a question, just so we can find it easily, make sure you put a Q at the front of it. Just a capital Q, and your question. Both Lynn and Kate have a lot of knowledge to share, so drop them in the chat, and we'll hopefully be able to get through at least a majority of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, the other question that popped up to mind, which was quite a conversation that I've had a couple of times in the last month, was when is it the right time to build a professional network? Is it ever too early to build a professional network, or when is it perhaps that you really started to do that yourself? So Kate, I'll come to you with that question.
Yeah, again, my principle is your network is your net worth. So it's never too early to start saving. That's what my financial advisor. If we really think about it, folks, your professional network starts developing in your neighborhood, growing up, at the schools you attend, right? And those relationships grow and bloom over time. So it's never too early. Lynn and I spoke yesterday, and the thought that sparked to my mind is the importance of building a professional network both within your company and then outside of your company within your industry. And I would argue, and I have evidence to back, that it's important to build both networks in parallel. So not only your internal network, but your external network.
Yeah.
Yes. And just to add on to Kate's point there, we also talked about oftentimes when you are a go-getter and you're really going after your career, you're a little bit down and in. You're into the task and you forget to look up and out and bring people along with your journey, which is your network. And it's almost too late to do it if you wait too long. Then when you go back to rebuild your network, number one, it takes a lot of time and effort. And two, it doesn't always feel as authentic as it could have had you brought these folks along with you in your journey. So knowing that not only is it, never too early to start your professional journey and your networking, but also keep it alive. Build it into your schedule, just like you would exercise or just like you would meetings. Build it into your schedule monthly or quarterly to touch base with your network. And it doesn't have to be a novel. It's simply catching up with them, letting them know you're still thinking about them and that you still, really value them as an advisor. I think that's important as you go too.
Yeah.
I think, I was just going to say, I'm going to piggyback onto that and say, I'm going to slide this next question in because it's kind of where the conversation's flowing. But talking about, it's obviously your network starts, as you said, when you're meeting people through maybe family, friends, down to your neighborhood. But what strategies when in that professional sector, maybe when you're leaving college, you obviously got your college network. What strategies would you recommend in starting out to effectively network? Because there's not networking and there's not working, right? So how do we effectively network?
I mean, I'll just share a kind of a quick personal story. When I during college, I joined student associations or joined industry associations as a student member, which was a great way. And you could be undergrad, graduate, doesn't matter. But I joined as a student member because associations tend to provide really great mentoring opportunities and volunteer leadership opportunities to help introduce you to the industry and start building those lifelong business relationships. So take advantage of a lot of great industry associations at your fingertips. One of the first professional organizations I joined, actually on the health system provider side, American College of Healthcare Executives. And that also introduced me to my first not-for-profit board service opportunity. So take those opportunities and run with them. The other point I'll raise, and we may touch on this later in the call, is this notion of bi-directional give and get networking. And that might be a question later on today, but I don't care if you're still in school, we all have something to offer a professional contact as much as they have something to offer us. So always be thinking in those terms of give and get.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Really valid
And
point. Is to add to that, Lynn?
Yeah, I was going to say, I also think, to be very practical about it, it is starting to think ahead. So like the strategy I would recommend is, if you are new to your career, ask yourself, where do you want to be in 5 years? Go talk to those people. Find out, research them, figure out what steps did they take, what avenues, like what other types of experiences did they need to have to be great at that. And then once you figure that out, don't stop there. Start looking lateral to that. So if that title is, I'm picking a like VP of sales title, query and find out what other VP of sales titles are out there, who do they belong to, and what path did they have? Because once you understand the various ways in which you can get to that type of role, now your networking can start to begin with, okay, who's the next people that I need on my sort of foundational 5, I call them. I know Kaja called out and she said hi. Kaja probably remembers me saying foundational 5 are kind of those people that are at your personal board of director table that are going to give you guidance around your career. They're going to be honest with you. They're going to also lead to sponsorship as you climb your career that help you get to that next role. But those are strategies that I think are very task oriented, that you can start at any point in your career. But that's the start of how you build your network and then expand it from there.
Yeah, I love that. And whether it is that, like you said, whether it's academia, coming from academia, your early part in your career, but even if you're middle to, being an experienced member, even if you're thinking, I want to get to that SVP level or that C-suite level, it's about starting to build those networks and connections with those individuals and asking the questions. How did you get there? What was your journey? I couldn't agree more. You've got an advocate there.
Yeah. I was just going to say, there's a question that everyone's kind of keen to understand, and it might change the direction of conversation, but I think we'll come back through as we work through it. But what other methods of getting ahead are there? So what's your approach when your network may have not been the support of your career progression? Because obviously there's key elements as to what you build and what you do to get ahead. What are some other strategies, methodologies that you've maybe used in your career or would advise on?
And this is for just strategizing around career progression.
Yeah.
Yes, beyond just networking, I think.
If I may, I'll jump in, and this is kind of practicing what I preach. I have found tremendous value in engaging with executive coaches, and it's whether it's career search, whether it's leadership coaching, whether it's personal brand coaching, or even productivity coaching. I've learned through my research of what makes a great leader and what makes a great individual contributor. There is real value in finding coaches who are going to help you with a very customized approach to meet your goals and be that dedicated eyes and ears. So I would look into a type of coaching at your level that makes sense for you.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, I also think if it's not your existing network that is in support of your career progression, one, understanding why they're not in support of that. It goes back to that critical feedback and figuring out which of that is authentic to you and which of that you think may be fabricated in their minds. But also then build your network outside of that. And by network, it's kind of sometimes a fancy way of just talking to people and working through people outside of the work that you normally do every day, and start to figure out who else will see value in what you bring forward. Because my guess is if you're passionate about it, you're probably pretty good at that as well. So find who those connections are that will help you progress. And it might not be your existing sort of lane that you're in.
Yeah, I think this adds to Alan's point here. He says, building the external network is just as important as those peer relationships.
Yeah, completely agree. I think you've got, we've had some panelists as well, Satish, saying great question. So thank you for sharing that one, actually, Satish. That was a great one. We've also got Andrew here, who's actually our CEO at Fraser Dove. When it comes to career progression, vision drives decision. So love that as a statement. Questions popped in through from Stuart. So thanks, Stuart, for sharing here. We've got true leaders at times may need to say things and or make recommendations that others may not want to hear, potentially at the risk of further career development at that time. What would you tell future leaders about how to handle their delicate type of crucial conversation? So that's an interesting question, Stuart. Thank you very much for sharing. Lynn, shall I come to you with your thoughts on that one?
Yes. So I think just knowing Dr. Glassman is much more advanced in his career, and he's had to go through the jungle gym, as we talked about, to get to that. I think when it comes to talking about the crucial conversations, they actually do have a book out there on how to do this, but I will summarize my take on that. It's still about being authentic. It's about setting the background before you engage in that conversation. If you come right at someone and say, I don't know why you're not doing XYZ, that makes no sense, it probably isn't going to be as well received as if you lay the foundation in the background as part of that conversation, saying, gosh, I've been here this long. These are my observations in other successful endeavors. I've seen it done this way. Help me, seeking to understand. Help me understand why we don't do it that way. I see merit and value in going about it that way. Talk to me about how we got here, because I have ideas on how we may want to shift that to bring a different outcome. Would you be open to that? It's a way, I think it's about approaching a conversation. When we talk about any crucial conversation, it's about setting the tone, setting the background to allow for an open conversation on both sides, even when the end result may not feel as two-sided. It may feel more one-sided, but at least you got there through a journey of respect and conversation.
Yeah, completely agree, Lynn. I think your first scenario there was a very parent-child scenario, kind of conversational situation to be in. I think that the latter is far more collaborative, understanding, and ultimately, often or not, you've got to try and understand that individual's thought process as to what got them there in order to almost help them develop themselves, as opposed to just telling them what it is that they should be doing or should have done differently. So I couldn't agree more. Kate, is there anything to add to that?
Well, I mean, this comes back to, I think, basic leadership principles of how you show up, and empathy and trust. And what I've always tried to establish with my teams and my direct reports is this: I will show you from day zero that you can trust me, that I will be accountable, and that I am working in your best interest, so that tees things up to have the most impact in the scenario Lynn just described, right? Where you have to deliver feedback or information that doesn't feel so good, but knowing the source. I think we'd all agree it's who delivers the tough message and how it's delivered. So I try to set those relationships up for success from day one, so that when those tough times roll in, that you can roll through them.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes you can have the best message in the world, but how it's being delivered can destroy the message.
Right.
So
I think as a transformative leader, I think the goal is you have to have the conversation. Not having it isn't an option.
Absolutely.
If you want to bring things forward and you want to grow and you want to stand out, you have to have the conversation. But I think, as Kate, Louise, you just said, it's all about the how.
Yep, I love that. And thank you, Stuart, for sharing that question. Sorry, Rosie.
Yeah, I was just going to say, interesting in kind of where you're at now in your careers. Obviously, there's lots of advice that can be said for the early point of your careers and difficult conversations. But I think you're both at quite pivotal points of your career. You're in that more executive space. And I know, Lynn, you've recently gone through a big change in your career as well. So I was going to, ask at this point of your career, what is it you're thinking about to get 2 steps ahead?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So the pivotal part that Rosie is referencing is I had to make a decision if I want to stay in the life science, more traditional types of roles, or if I wanted to take sort of my breadth of experience and in part try to help newer companies. So PE backed, venture capitally backed, startup type of companies grow as a company with the experience that I've had. So I do a lot more consulting around that now. I also do more of the board of director type of work. But coming to that decision was not an easy one because to your point, when I looked forward, I thought, what does my day and what does my world look like 2 to 5 years from now? And it could look various ways. And I had to sort of pick that path. And the path that I chose was I still want to engage professionally. I still want to share and help others grow through the experiences that I've been very blessed in my career to have had. And to do that, how do I do that in a balanced way that allows me to personally meet those goals, but also live a much more balanced life and do it in a new way that stretches me as well, which is what I'm doing now with my own business.
Hmm. Interesting. And if you don't mind me asking, for a lot of we've talked about networking, we've talked about expanding that, thinking two steps ahead. What kind of initiatives or plans or forms of communication have you had internally, whether it's with a boss or HR? What's that looked like from an internal perspective? Have you ever gone and sat down and said to HR or your line manager at the time, well, this is how I mapped out my next 2 years? Or, what kind of inspiration can you give to perhaps others when it comes to internal communication?
I do think mapping it out, especially when you're still in the sort of confines of a broader organization, because being clear on where you want to go with your career. I know Kate and I had a great conversation about that last night. You have to be intentional about letting people know where you go. And sometimes the higher up you go and the more talented you become, talent sometimes gets in your way because you could go 5 different directions and do them all really well. But people can't help you on that journey unless you're clear with them where you want to go. People in general want to help. HR, as you said, as a department, they want to help you build. But I think to your point, Louise, being very intentional in saying, this is where I want to go. I want to be, a C-suite member in the next 5 years. Here's what I think I need to do skill set wise to be capable to do that position. Please help me understand what am I missing? And more importantly, how do I get there using all of the tools that many corporations have to help people develop in their careers? In my background, I had a company come forward and say, we need you to go globally. We need you to learn a broader base of information. And I took that leap, which is a leap for a lot of Americans to go, but I loved it for all these international folks on the line between Copenhagen and Switzerland and covering 103 countries in between. It was the best experience of my life that I could never have received from a textbook. And that was due in part to someone helping me map out the future and then figuring out what steps do you take to make that future happen.
Love that. Brilliant. And we'll come to you, Kate, with the same question. What are you thinking about now in order to get 2 steps ahead, or what does that 2 steps ahead even look like for you?
Well, no, and Lynn, I so appreciate your experience and points there. I can speak from the experience of being a seasoned chief of staff, which is a topic I'm very passionate about. I've seen many flavors of chief of staff in our industry. I've been a student of the chief of staff role for a long time. And so my thinking 2 steps ahead is really around translating those rich chief of staff experiences into operational leadership roles. My goal is to be a chief operating officer. So I have been going through that process of mapping out my experiences, drawing parallels to the responsibilities of a typical pharma, biotech, med device COO, and showing the parallels, showing the crosswalk, if you will. So I think that's really key. On the point of having crucial conversations with your line manager, with your leaders, your sponsors, and your organization. It's be brave. It's okay. And you should share what your goals are. And Lynn and I talked about this yesterday. That might mean you don't stay at that organization. But a seasoned leader and a seasoned professional know that it, sometimes you do leave. And I had a manager who quoted her former manager with the line of, "Great organizations produce great alumni." So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
And do you think there's potentially a bit of an educational piece for some businesses? Because I guess being, part of a talent consultancy and doing a lot of recruitment over the years, is that there certainly seems to be a bit of a negative outlook on potentially those that do not progress every 2 to 3 years, or maybe takes a sidestep into a role, a lateral move. I was on the phone to a client, around 3-4 weeks ago now, where somebody had been in an organization and hadn't really progressed or developed for the past 4 to 5 years, and that was almost seen as a bit of a negative, which is interesting. I don't know what your thoughts are with that. Certainly with the whole kind of jungle gym, do you think there is like a bit of an education piece where we need to kind of say it's not just about titles, it's not just about the vertical route up, it's about the roles they're encompassing underneath that title, and it's okay to take sometimes lateral moves if they are adding skill sets and a new dimension to their capabilities. So, Lynn, I don't know what your thoughts are with that.
I think that one is, I do hear the same sort of maybe bias and stigma around that, whether it's that you've been in one role and not progressed. I hear it maybe more if you're in one company for too long, even though you've had successive roles.
Yeah.
It's about telling the story of what you've been able to learn along that way. So I do think the educational side of that, it's incumbent upon yourself to make sure, which sometimes people don't want to kind of toot their own horns. They don't want to, seem like they're boasting. But it's
Yeah.
almost critical when you are looking to build your book of business into different areas that people know what you've done to be good at it. And I do think, Louise, there are roles that you need to stay in for longer than other roles. I think
Yeah.
there are people leading roles as examples, like for first-time managers of people. You simply can't get through enough experiences and situations to lead through that without the clock ticking a certain period of time. And that period of time varies for people. Sometimes people, given if it's a growing company, new product launches, maybe it can occur in 2 years. But for others, it may take 3 to 5 years to get the skills necessary to be the foundation for the next level role. And I think if a company doesn't recognize that that is needed, then I do think there's education around why that's a good step and why that's needed. This person's actually better skilled for the next level because they built a strong foundation.
Yeah.
I think the longer your tenures, and I mean, I'm early in my career, so this is my longest tenure yet, but I feel like talking to the individuals that I speak to day in, day out, is that the longer you're there, the more storms that you weather. If you haven't been there let's say 6 months is onboarding, by 12 months you've got to know the team, and then probably 18 months to 3 years, that's when you start to get the troubles. That's when you start to steady the ship. And that's what people inevitably need to hire for, is experience rather than job titles and your CV. You've got to look at the person beyond the paper.
Well said.
And yeah, Rosey and Lynn, just to piggyback on that, going back to this notion of coaching, or really investing time and focus on your brand and that narrative. It is, we all know it's really tough to write your own narrative. It's okay to ask for help. Do your own 360 evaluation. Ask folks who know you well and folks that maybe don't know you so well to help you write that narrative and to tell your story, because that is arguably one of the most important pieces of your portfolio and your brand, and how you show up as you interview for new opportunities, internally and externally.
Yeah, definitely. We talk
Yeah.
about it a lot here with the personal brand, don't we, Louise?
We do. And we've got Gloria who's jumped in here saying, Lynn, I loved working in Switzerland as well. Highly recommend working outside of your current environment. Andrew's popped on and said, Gloria, cross-cultural experience is hugely valuable and in a great demand. I won't go into the whole talent crunch, but certainly this, demand for talent now, kind of country by country demand is significantly increasing, obviously year on year. We've also got here Satish. Thanks again for the question. What's your advice for someone who has taken a forced career break and now plans to get back pursuing the career goals? I think that's a really interesting one, because in my mind that could be whether you're gone off on maternity leave. It could be that you've taken some time out, parenthood, or it could be sabbatical, it could be traveling, or just a general break. So what would your advice be, potentially, Kate, on that?
Oh my gosh, it's such a great question. And for forced career breaks, first of all, we need to destigmatize them, right? People take breaks for all sorts of reasons, whether it's personal, professional, starting a company, a family event, whatever that is. I think that it is critical to maintain a positive attitude, and that's easier for some than others, but focus on prioritizing that positive attitude. To surround yourself with folks from your network that you've been investing in and nurturing. Keep those folks in your network close, who are there to support you, to brainstorm with you, to put you in touch with other contacts and opportunities. And then take that time to really intentionally map out, as mentioned earlier, what is it that you're looking for? And it's okay to have an open mind, right? You need to be somewhat specific, somewhat focused in what you're looking for to leap back into. But it's okay to keep an open mind. And I would say too, in a positive way, track your results. Who did you talk to this week? How many, did you send resumes out? Did you attend a webinar, today's webinar?
Yeah.
Keep your results, because I think that builds that positive mental momentum towards your goals. That
Yeah,
would be my
absolutely. And I think it's so important, whether it's from that network through conversations of understanding market intelligence, insights as to what's generally going on. Certainly if you're isolating it to the life sciences market, for example, there is so much going on within data sciences, within AI. So there's so many different hot areas that are developing, that are growing, even from a therapeutic experience. So I guess it's understanding where the direction of your industry is potentially going in, and then thinking about your own kind of skill sets, values, where you can add value, what you want to grow, your own technical capabilities within, and then aligning almost where the market's going with your own ambitions. Is there anything to add to that, Lynn?
Yeah, I would also say, depending on what that reason is for the forced break, you learn things. Like I had a forced break when I returned from Switzerland. I had a critically ill daughter, and my job was to help her get well. And that forced a career break for me. When I got back into the career, started to really pursue different opportunities, I actually was given advice at one point that I look back and I don't know that I appreciated the advice, because they said, don't share with people that's why you took off.
Oh, right.
And
Okay.
I thought about that and I thought, actually it made me much more patient centric, which is critical to the healthcare industry. It made me understand the education needed around different disease states that are very prevalent right now and lack in disease state knowledge. And it also helped me understand from a DEI and B, I bring my whole person to work. And if you don't like it in the interview, well, then we should determine that up front. So I
not the
come
right
with
fit.
family and I come with other things. So I think also understanding what you learned during that time is also probably applicable in some cases back to the work environment.
Yeah. I think that's some really, really good, really sound advice.
I'm
I also
conscious of the time.
I know it
I
always
hate
just
to be that
disappears.
person. This happens every week. I mean, every week, every month. But I know there's a really particular question that we'd love to ask and be able to give you time to answer. So First of all, thank you everyone for all your questions. Apologies if we didn't get to you. The engagement's been brilliant, so really thank you for your questions today. But I'm gonna throw this one in for a final piece from both of you, and it's really to talk about what was the pivotal moment that enabled you to think or get 2 steps ahead in your career, getting a hold of this topic. Lynn, I'll send that straight to you first.
So this one, I was faced at one point with a crucible leadership moment whereby I was requesting a major structural change and engagement 3 months before a major product launch with a newer company to the US. Not a time that you want to disrupt things, but I knew and I had a vision around why this was going to be critical to making the success of these marketplaces even better. I sat around the boardroom with all of the executives. I was actually not in a senior level position at that time. I was a director level. And as everyone else leaned back from the boardroom table and said, great idea, wrong timing, I leaned in and said, no, this is exactly why we have to do this right now. And the president of our company leaned in and they said, are you willing to stake your job on this? Because that's essentially what you're doing here. And I said, I am actually, because if we don't make these changes, I'll be back here in 6 months and you'll collect my keys and my computer and my
I'll be out.
been successful. And that moment was my defining moment as a leader, where they said she has, leadership courage. She has a vision that she stands behind. And furthermore, the results were there, and that pilot turned into a standalone channel of business for the organization that existed many, many more years. So that in that moment, it changed the trajectory and the internal branding for my own leadership style that afforded me a different pathway that led more towards senior level management.
A very brave moment.
Brave, courage. Yeah.
A little scary.
Yeah. and Kate, I'll send it your way.
No, very briefly, a pivotal moment was learning the importance and the value of voicing your goals and aspirations, and you never know how or when that will benefit you. I fell into the chief of staff profession, which literally changed the trajectory of my career. I was about a year into my career at Deloitte when a hurricane delayed a project on the East Coast by about 8 weeks. The entire team had to find another billable project on very short notice. And because by chance I had voiced my interest in global healthcare strategy to a partner the year prior during the interview process, they remembered that, and I was nominated to become chief of staff to Deloitte's global healthcare practice leader at the time. That moment literally changed my career. So you never know who remembers the dreams, goals, and the aspirations that you share with them in a casual conversation, and how that might help you in future.
Yeah, I love that, Kate. And that's a lot of that is communication, right? It's having that collaborative communication with whether it's team members or your senior leaders. But thank you, hugely inspiring, both of you. And I think we've shared so much today, which I'm sure a lot of people will hopefully be able to take away in some form or format and maybe execute in their own lives. So thank you so much.
We will be really, Lynn and Kate have kindly put together a document, a cheat sheet of how to get 2 steps ahead, which is a document that we shared on our members group. If you'd like to join our members group, a colleague of mine will now be posting it. It's completely accessible and free, and where most of our content is posted. We're up to, I think, like 900 members now. So really excited to keep growing that space and channeling the communication through there. Thank you, everyone.
We're running a little bit over.
So over,
but
so
we always get carried away. I know, but thank you, so much to the audience for dialing in today. It's very much appreciated. And Lynn and Kate, you've been fantastic speakers. So it's been absolutely a pleasure to have you as part of this broadcast. And the Lift Up community page is just showing here on screen. And as Rosey said, by all means, click in. You'll see all the future events coming up. We're actually getting quite booked up for the rest of the year with the events, but we want to keep this whole community group connected, inspired, sharing thoughts, ideas, and career journeys. So for now, I think we'll say goodbye, and hopefully we'll see many of you in the coming months ahead. So take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.